Hi, everybody, and welcome to this session of the Crypto Policy Symposium. My name's Rory Jones. I used to be the BBC's technology correspondent for many years, and I'm now an independent technology writer and consultant, and have long taken an interest in all things crypto. Our subject for the next 45 minutes is crypto the new internet? I was first told at a Bitcoin conference, I think it was in 2014, that I didn't need to worry about the cryptocurrency itself. What I needed to really be interested in was the technology underneath it, blockchain, which was going to change everything. And just in the same way as the internet had. It was going to be just like the internet. In fact, it might be even bigger than the net. It was early days. I was told by this very convincing person at this conference, it was just like the early 90s for the web, the tech which made the internet take off. But give it a few years and it was all going to happen. We'd see monstrous changes. Well, I waited and I waited and I waited, and I'm still waiting a little bit. And today we have a panel to explore whether crypto will ever be the new internet. It's a small but perfectly formed panel. Two people: David Gerard, all-round troublemaker, crypto skeptic, author of Attack of the 50-Foot Blockchain, which I have to tell you is not fan fiction, and can reliably be relied upon to fight his corner very strongly. Keith Pritchard, former managing director in the JP Morgan IT department. So a wealth of experience, both in technology and in banking. So he knows his stuff. So first of all, I'm going to get each of our panelists to give us a brief, well, when I say brief, I never expect them to be that brief, either of them. But, 5 minutes or so on their overview on whether crypto really is going to be, or is already, the new internet. David Gerard, why don't you kick us off?
Okay. So the first answer to this question is no. It is not.
Us then.
Right, we can stop now. No, this is a common cryptocurrency and blockchain promotional talking point. So I think the earliest it was said was 2012. Now, it's not unreasonable to be so excited about your new technology that you think it's the greatest thing ever and it'll definitely take over the world given half a chance. It rapidly became a talking point whenever anyone objected to this stuff, saying, oh, look, it's just like the early internet, or it's the new internet, or one of those. It's just like the early internet is the usual form. When you hear anyone say, but look, crypto is like the early internet, or blockchain is like the early internet, or Bitcoin is like the early internet, it's always used as an excuse for failure every time. It's like you say, look, this stuff sucks and it doesn't work. This is nonsense. This is bad money. It's a bad investment. This technology is a slow database, or whatever they say. Look, it's like the early internet. No one liked the internet in 1995 or whatever. So firstly, it's an excuse of failure. Secondly, yes, they did. They'll quote one news article saying, oh, look, the internet sucks. You shouldn't believe it. But, I was there at the time in the 90s. I remember everyone thought this was the coolest thing in the world and it would definitely turn everything upside down. And it did, because it was obvious it would. Like the thing about the internet was it was a useful technology from the beginning. Like the earliest days of the proto-internet were useful and used for real work. Email was invented in 1970 and students were doing drug deals on it in 1971. There's a use case. Bitcoin took 2 years for that one.
Yeah, but, so nearly there.
So yeah, it is false that the internet had no visible use case for 13 years, because it did. at every stage. It was useful, and people would anticipate exciting new innovations with the internet, but it was already cool, and it was obvious those things would come when you could see the path to them. There were credible predictions of iPhones being made in 1994, that sort of thing, like in quite some detail, because it was obvious that once technology reached a certain stage, you'd have these things. With cryptocurrency, you can't even see that way forward to that. So whenever someone makes a claim like that, generally, I think they generally turn out not to understand the tech very much. Some people are technologically credible and will say, look, it's like the early internet in the following ways. And, you can talk about that, but mostly not.
Okay, so I've put you down as a no. Keith Pritchard, with your long career in IT and banking, you presumably are much more enthusiastic and are a big believer in this whole principle.
I'm afraid you have to put me down as a no as well, Rory. I approach this whole topic from the perspective of somebody who's spent a lot of time understanding the business I work in, which has been principally derivatives and FX, so building platforms to support those businesses. And whenever some new technology comes along, my thought process is, okay, what are the problems that this business has? And how can this new technology or new idea support those problems in a better way than existing technologies do? And that's the thing I really haven't ever been able to understand, or nobody's explained to me how some of the blockchain architecture, which I understand very well. As a technologist, I've spent time understanding the detail of how these technologies work. What are the problems they solve that exist in financial services? And I just haven't seen one to date. Everything, it can do lots of clever stuff. And as a technologist, a lot of it does excite me and does interest me the way it works. And it is very clever. But I don't see the problem that we have in financial services that this technology solves in a unique way, that there aren't tried and tested technologies that have been around for all of my career that you couldn't solve in another way. So that's my basic angle, is I don't see what it solves for us that we can't do with existing technologies.
Before we drill down into blockchain, which I think is what a lot of people mean by it's like the new internet, just more generally, why are you such an unbeliever in the wider promise of cryptocurrency as a sort of liberating force? Is it because you're from the old fiat world, you were JP Morgan, you would say that, wouldn't you? Is that the reason?
No, as I say, it's really, and I've implemented lots of new types of technology in my previous roles. So, I'm not an old dinosaur who doesn't want to change and use new technologies. It's just that I've always thought about what are the problems my business has and how do I solve them? And yes, there are some problems, some things that the blockchain architecture gives us in terms of capability, but I can solve them in other ways with tried and tested technology. And particularly as somebody who's had responsibility for building platforms and then supporting them going forward, I understand how some of these other technologies have been around for 20, 30 years work, and it's relatively easy to get people off the street to help me build them or support them if there are problems. Why would I use something that was new, untested? We really haven't seen what happens when it's used on a wide scale. Why would I use that technology when I could use something that's tried and tested? We understand it. If it goes wrong, we understand how to fix it. If it's got performance problems, we know how to address them. So I just don't see the benefits that this new technology brings to the problems that I see investment banking having, which is the environment I've worked in.
David, Gerard, let's focus in on blockchain itself. You are a technologist. I think one of the many things you do is you're a system administrator professionally. What is blockchain? Why is it not original? Why is it not going to change the world?
So the blockchain, so this is the thing, by the way, whenever I do panels, there's always someone who comes up at the end, like typically a senior finance person, like a senior banker or something, says, look, that's all very interesting and I want to know more about this. What is a blockchain?
Yeah.
Like, I can explain in 2 seconds. No, I can sort of explain it, but it doesn't answer the question, because the real question is, what is a blockchain and why all of this fuss?
Mhm.
As if the explanation is not technical at all. Now, what is a blockchain? It's fundamentally, it's a append-only data structure, like an accounting ledger you can only add entries to. And in the cryptocurrency version, it's that ledger plus a mechanism to decide who gets to add the next entry to a shared public ledger. That's quite simple. In the business definitions, I've seen the wildest things described as blockchains, up to and including literally a conventional relational database sold as blockchain.
The whole promise is that it removes the need for trust, right? It's trustless. It kind of automates trust.
And I think that's an interesting, sorry to jump in, that's an interesting point, because you're right, Rory, that's typically, when I ask people, well, what does it bring me that existing technologies don't, that trust point comes up. And I agree with people, the way you get consensus in one of these networks is interesting, it is different. But what I often say is that a problem we have in financial services today? Do we not trust our central banks? Do we not trust our large utilities who support a lot of the financial services? So yes, it can provide a trustless environment, but is that a problem we have today? Rather than using the technology to say, how can we apply it? It's, okay, it provides us a trust, it will claim to provide us a trustless environment, sort of, I would say. So what? Is that a problem?
It's an approach where the entire business blockchain pitch is literally the Bitcoin pitch with the buzzword change to blockchain. You can have a trustless environment. It's decentralized. It's immutable and uncensorable. Why does the business want any of that?
Exactly.
They don't. They just don't want that. These are things that Bitcoin people want because they have a particular political program where they want money that works in a weird way. And then when Bitcoin went down in 2014, this was promoted originally by JP Morgan's Bitcoin interest group, I believe, to promote this technology as blockchain, thinking this might be useful to people. And the ancestry of this shows, because who promotes blockchain to business? It's the same people who promote cryptocurrencies, and they promote them in the same venues using the same buzzwords. It's the same marketing.
So tell me, I mean, I've heard all sorts of apparently convincing use cases over the years. Some while back, somebody came to me and said Marks and Spencer was going to look at this to be sure about the provenance of their beef. That, this joint of beef, this piece of steak came from this cow, and because it was on the blockchain, because it was listed on the blockchain, you could be certain that it was a well looked after cow fed on the finest grass in, I don't know, County Limerick or something or other. Why does that idea not work? And there's lots of similar ideas about, fine wines, blood diamonds, any kind of controversial product where you want to be sure of the provenance.
I mean, for me, Rory, sorry, David, I'll just
jump into
my view on that. For me, most of those claims and use cases have at their core some sort of desire to have a central repository of information where everybody can go to and see, all right, we all see the same data and we can all understand who's added data to it, who's changed, etc. And the blockchain architecture can give you that. But 30 years ago, when I started my career off in financial services technology, we did exactly that, where we wanted to have a single trading book managed globally. And we did it with good old database replication. So when you add a record to a database, there's a log of, I inserted this record or I changed this record. And what you can do is give that log to 10 different instances and apply that same log. And really, blockchain, and again, hugely simplifying, is not a million miles away from that. You have a transaction, you apply that transaction to many databases. So again, it's doing something which it does do. It lets people, every node in the network, see the same data. But we could do that with technology that's 30 years old. So why do it with something new? There's nothing new. There's nothing that opens new avenues, new solutions that we don't already have tried and trusted technology that can do already.
I say one word to you: Estonia. We're always hearing Estonia touted. I can see David laughing here.
This is my favorite example of a blockchain thing, by the way.
As the place where they are, and I know I've been there a couple of times myself, they're very advanced technically. Their citizens are very digitally aware. They've got all sorts of evidence, they would say, of putting the blockchain into action. Is that not the case?
No. So the Estonian blockchain revolution, this is important because this is used as social proof that blockchains are really good, and therefore about 2 more steps, and therefore you should buy Bitcoin, right? Let's be very clear. This is all marketing for cryptocurrencies. Estonia's blockchain, now there's a company called GuardTime. They are a software company. They make a product called KSI GuardTime or KSI Blockchain. This is basically a time-stamped ledger of, it's a ledger of time-stamped entries of data. It's a log of data. It does this job very well. Like, it works fine. It's good software, does its job. They literally adopted the term blockchain as marketing. The software had existed since 2007. They adopted the term blockchain as marketing. Like, they admitted this in CoinDesk a few years ago. And then they said, when the shine goes off blockchain, we'll change the name. They were refreshingly brazen. But when you talk about Estonia's blockchain revolution, you are literally talking about something that is a piece of software that was marketed as blockchain because blockchain was the cool buzzword. And then that is used as an excuse for everything else that markets itself with the word blockchain. And you should definitely buy them all and also buy some Bitcoins. It's absolutely 100. The word blockchain in enterprise blockchain, it's 100% marketing buzzword. It does not even denote any particular technology. It denotes a particular package of marketing promises.
I'm going to give you another example. This is one that's often used. It's a little company called Maersk. You know about Maersk?
Mm-hmm.
How blockchain technology is beefing up supply chain visibility. And they claim they are using this international shipping distribution company. They are using it, and it is giving people much more information and certainty about the supply chain, and it's working for them. Maersk have been one of the big investors, haven't they, in blockchain? Mm-hmm. Why does that not stack up?
Well, again, for me, Rory, yes, that does, and what they've done does work. And blockchain, again, they're relying on multiple people, multiple nodes of a network seeing the same data. That's what drives their use case. And yes, the blockchain architecture will do that for you, but so will database log replication that I talked about. So yes, blockchain can give you these things, but so can technology and architecture designs that have been around for years and years. So that's where my argument comes from. Is not that it's got no use at all. It's just that it's not unique. It's not going to change the world. It's not revolutionary, because as I said, when I started my career 30 years ago, we were building things like this where every node of a network saw the same data, and traders could trade off the same book in Singapore as they could in New York with tried and tested other technologies. So it's not delivering, in terms of solutions, anything new.
And in your time in the world of finance technology, your bosses became very enthusiastic about this in general. And in fact, there was a pattern, wasn't there, of huge resistance to the whole idea of cryptocurrencies from the old established finance industry, which suddenly surrendered about 18 months ago and got enthusiastic, ironically, only to find that then the next crash came along. But how would you assess the level of continuing enthusiasm across traditional banking?
I think to a certain extent it's driven by, and I think David might echo this as well, people getting involved in the discussions who don't actually understand at a detailed level how the technology works. So as a technologist, as I've been saying, I don't see that it brings any new solutions that existing technologies can't give us. So why use it? If I was asked to build something where you needed to see data in the same across multiple nodes in a global network, yes, I could use the blockchain pattern, or I could use another existing tried and tested one, and I would use the more tested and understood patterns. So I think that sort of roller coaster of interest and support from the financial services institutions comes down to initially fear. They sort of see, oh, if I don't get into this, that new startup bank will, and they'll have something which I won't, and it will suddenly give them capabilities that I haven't got, so I better get on board. And then gradually they understand it and think, and they have people like me trying to explain, well, actually, it's not giving you anything you can't do already. And then the interest wanes again.
I asked somebody quite senior in the sort of fintech stroke data industry the other day, what is the most important innovation of the next 5 years? And he said blockchain. So the industry has, to some extent, drunk the Kool-Aid. Is that fair?
I would say yes, but it depends. It really depends who you ask, because quite often, and I say this having been a fairly senior person myself in some investment banks, but quite often senior people don't understand the detail of the technology and how it works. Maybe if they did, they would sort of see, well, back to David's point, a lot of this is marketing. It's not doing anything new that I couldn't do with a database log replication platform, or say something that me and my teams built 30 years ago was doing effectively what blockchain does today.
David, isn't it fair to say that moving away from the finance industry, there are parts of academia and the IT industry that do buy into this, and they're not all people who don't understand it?
There's a lot of attempts by some academics to get into what they see as a burgeoning blockchain field where they can pump out their useful product, which is papers. There are reports of blockchain journals who reject papers that are skeptical of blockchain because, what's the point of the journal? At that point, you have to wonder about the quality of that journal. Some of the journals are published by predatory publishers, predatory open source, open access publishers, that sort of thing. And there's a very definite push from cryptocurrency companies to fund academia to academic wash the reputation of the field. So I would not take that as evidence. It is bought and paid for evidence. Mm-hmm. The FT had a whole series on this a few years ago.
And I'd agree, David, and just bring up a story from my own past where many years ago, I was a research chemist doing research into surface reactions. And as a part of that, we used platinum electrodes to do our research. And it was just at the time when the whole cold fusion bubble came up. And suddenly all the money was going into researching cold fusion. And the people who claimed they were achieving cold fusion said they were doing it using platinum electrodes. And because we were researching surface reaction mechanisms using platinum electrodes, our whole research group suddenly got changed to take a look at cold fusion, right? For the next 6 months, you're doing this research. And those of us working at the coalface knew this is smoke and mirrors. Just look at the fundamental science. It doesn't work, but that's where the money was. And as you were saying, that's where people got their research grants from. And that's where many papers were published around cold fusion. So, and I do see those sort of parallels.
Yeah. It's you have to remember that this is not something happening out there in the void. It's funded by people who want to make a great deal of money from it. And, you know, universities hooking up with industry, that's actually probably useful and good, particularly in technology. You want that, at least some of it. But you should look what's happening and who's paying for it and how robust and regarded the journals are and so on. Mm-hmm. You know, peer review is a status that means this isn't obviously rubbish, that sort of thing. It's not some sort of gold imprimatur of this is the truth now. It's like a blog post that someone signed off on and gone, yeah, that's pretty good. That's robust. You can look at this and see what they've done. It's interesting. It's a way of indicating that this is not nonsense, as opposed to this is brilliant.
Let me put a sort of a theory to you that with crypto, we're not in the mid-90s, to give the sort of internet parallel. We're in the late 80s, where the internet was still a really niche interest. And it was wait for it. It was waiting for the web to come along. Maybe crypto's web has not arrived yet. Maybe it's just waiting for a breakthrough technology. And maybe that will be something like NFTs he throws into the mix. What do you say to that?
I would say that you can make hypothetical claims of anything. And they should be disregarded, particularly when we have a 13-year track record of failure. What has crypto succeeded at? It didn't work as money. Bitcoin was literally invented to be electronic cash. It failed really hard at being electronic cash. Like, not even Bitcoiners would actually spend Bitcoins. It then became a speculative instrument. You can make money from it. Sure, you can. The blockchain data structure. I mean, we're talking about the technology as if this is something that's hard to understand. It's so simple that you go, where's the magic? That's stupid. You must be explaining it wrong. No, it's actually that simple. And yes, it's actually quite stupid because it's just marketing hype attached to an append-only ledger.
I challenge you to explain mining, for example, in a simple way. It's not that simple.
Oh, sure. Bitcoin mining. You have to, Satoshi wanted to give away Bitcoins. How could he give away Bitcoins? How would you know that it's 1,000 people asking for coins or just one guy with 1,000 sock puppet accounts? Well, he decided the way to do this was run a lottery. How do you run a lottery? Well, you have some commitments that you can't fake. That is, you waste electricity as fast as you can. So the more electricity you waste, the more lottery tickets you purchase. And then you get to be the one winner every 10 minutes or so. Note that this doesn't scale at all. So we have the same 7 transactions a second being done in 2022 using a country's worth of electricity as Satoshi ran on his PC in 2009. It's very, very stupid, and it's so stupid you think that can't be right. It must be more useful than that. No, it's literally just a lottery where most of the electricity is thrown away. Mm-hmm. And also someone calculates some transactions, which would take about as much power as an iPhone.
Now,
2007 iPhone.
That, of course, is the early iteration of this technology. We're going to move on to something much more exciting now. So that was proof of work, and we're going to move on to proof of stake, and everything will be wonderful.
Sure. Right? So proof of stake is basically setting up a investment contract where a body decides if you stake a certain number of a given cryptocurrency, you get more of that cryptocurrency if your validator wins is the randomly selected winner. This is administered by whoever's running that chain, and it's supposedly decentralized, but in cryptocurrency, all decentralization is basically fake. So when Ethereum finally moves to proof of stake, which it may actually do later this month, then it will become an investment contract administered by the Ethereum Foundation as the recognized authority. And I say that as the recognized authority because a whole bunch of the exchanges have signed on to the Ethereum Foundation version of it. Functionally, they run the system. They would claim they don't run the system. I would say, look at what's actually happening.
Okay, we've dealt with the past. Let's look at the future. Here's the big exciting thing about the whole crypto world and blockchain:
Money?
the metaverse.
You mean Second Life with a stock scam attached?
This is the technology, the vital technology, which is going to power Web3 and the metaverse, the future of how we'll live. We'll all be wandering, our avatars will be wandering around, transacting, buying and selling NFTs, generally having a wild old time in Mark Zuckerberg's and other people's metaverses. Keith, does that not stack up for you?
Not really, because when people make those bold claims about this is going to be the new world, the new future, they never quite get to explain how and why and what is it about blockchain which means it's going to enable that shiny future. It's very easy to get excited about visions of the future and then as almost a throwaway statement, oh, and by the way, this is the technology that's going to enable it, without joining those two statements with some logical, and this is how, and this is why, and look at all these great new capabilities that this particular technology is going to bring, and therefore enable that future. So I never see that sort of logical connection being made between this fantastic shiny vision and this technology we're talking about that will enable that vision.
But that's always how we advance in technology, isn't it? We are given some, I remember the early days of mobile phones, they were going to do all sorts of things that turned out not to be that attractive, but surprising things did happen with them that came and caught us unawares and became hits. It's unpredictable exactly what the metaverse, if there's going to be a thing, will look like, but it's got huge potential, and cryptocurrency could be part of that.
But each of those new technologies you talked about, say some mobile phones, they had something new. They were bringing some new, the internet, given the sort of topic of this session, it brought something new to the table that hadn't been there before. And I'd almost look at it the other way around. You're bringing something new to the table. We don't know where that's going to go. What seems to be happening here is saying, here's this new technology. We can't tell you, or we won't explain to you what new capabilities it's bringing, but what we'll say is where it's going to end up. Whereas, I think when you get new technical revolutions or evolutions, you don't know where it's going to go, but you can see what it's bringing new. So what mobile phones brought to us was, huge scale of communication. Where that ended up with, me being able to buy something on Amazon and have it delivered tomorrow wasn't something we could foresee. So absolutely, but there was something new that they brought to us. So, and that's what I'm not seeing with these claims being made about, blockchain and that technology. What are the new things new capabilities that they bring, which might end up in somewhere new?
Well, David, they're bringing us. We wouldn't have the wonder of NFTs really without blockchain, would we? NFTs will be the kind of the transactional basis of this whole new world where we're buying virtual goods to gussy up our fine homes on in the metaverse.
So I did a thing on CNN a while ago about how the NFT market had collapsed by 99% and how there appeared to be no interest in this anymore. So that was the one metaverse technology that actually existed. And it didn't really go anywhere because it turned out that the only people buying this stuff were crypto speculators.
You're already, in 1990 dissing the web, which has only been created in 1989. That's what you're doing. NFTs, they're brand new, they're really exciting. There's going to be boom and bust, but they'll prove themselves eventually, won't they?
Anything might hypothetically happen. I might hypothetically grow wings and fly. It's not likely. I would say look at the track record. And the track record is these things are the latest crypto speculative vehicle, and they've done their dash, and they're not really... I mean, an NFT is just a...
Michael Owen has created one which will never lose its value.
Who? What?
Michael Owen has created an NFT. The former Liverpool footballer created an NFT that will never lose its value. That's pretty exciting, isn't it?
How's that work? Please tell me.
I'll give you the details afterwards.
Is he
Yeah.
guaranteed to buy it for the same price forever? Is that how he's guaranteeing that it won't lose value?
There is not a lot of clarity around his offer. I think it's fair to say, but there's a whole. By the way,
I'm thinking of that care home cryptocurrency that Rory investigated a few years ago.
Yeah, a little diversion here. Yes, I did write a piece when this guy came up with a plan for people to have a cryptocurrency which would enable them to have rooms in a care home and speculate on the future value of those rooms. And it did strike me as a quite outlandish and outrageous idea.
And they were shut down, weren't they?
Yes, it turned out
Good.
not to be an entirely values-driven organization, shall we say.
Fantastic.
But let's focus back on the internet and come back to the key thing that lots of people in this world say when you challenge them about this, which is that it is early days yet. This was a hugely revolutionary idea in 2009 when Satoshi Nakamoto wrote his paper. Okay, 13 years have passed. Where should we be at by now, Keith, if this were to be the new internet?
Well, when I think about the internet, I think of that as a digital electronic network that allows you to exchange data. And financial services is all about data, and any transaction is a change in data. So you could see from the start that the internet, given those facts, was going to change the way financial services worked. I haven't seen, 13 years into the distributed ledger concept and idea, I haven't seen yet something which lays out very simply, here is how and why this technology is going to change. So, not only haven't we seen, I think, significant market-changing implementations using this technology, but I haven't even seen almost a roadmap laid out to say, this is why, here is the story, here's the sales pitch, which is really why this is going to change financial services.
David, surely the point is that this is an organic thing. There is no roadmap. It's decentralized. Thousands of ideas are blooming. A lot of them will fail, but some will succeed beyond people's wildest dreams.
So more broadly, this is the teleological argument for technologies, like the Gartner hype cycle idea, where all technologies will inevitably succeed eventually. And of course, that's completely false. Most technologies fail. Most technologies go nowhere. You come up with an exciting new idea and it never works out. It never quite works out. And you keep trying to patch it up with newer bits and it never quite works out. There's a lot of reasons for that. It might be that market conditions are wrong. It might be that you just can't make your costs lower than your competitors. It might be that your idea is just completely fraudulent marketing garbage. There might be all sorts of reasons for technologies to fail. Technologies don't mostly succeed. They mostly don't work out. So this is no exception. There's no reason to compare this to the internet. Doing that is something that needs to be justified, and they haven't justified it at all. If we compare our thing to the greatest revolution in human communication since the television or the radio, then our thing must be cool too. Well, no, you have to justify being able to make the comparison. You're not actually Galileo coming up with a genius idea that everyone's trying to suppress. Maybe your idea is just not very good. Maybe your idea is only good for speculation. Maybe everything else is just marketing, creating financial instruments and using technology as the excuse to do so. Maybe that's the answer to the comparison, and the comparison to the internet is just marketing talk for financial instruments.
we have got about 5 minutes left, and we're trying to end all these sessions by thinking about, what the implications are for policymakers. I mean, does it matter, Keith, if huge claims are made about this technology? Huge claims are made, as David has said, about all sorts of things that end up not getting there. Shouldn't we just applaud the ambition and sit back, or are there dangers in getting overexcited about cryptocurrency?
I think there are dangers, and those dangers are exacerbated if people making policy or having influence on policy don't understand how the underlying technology or financial instrument works. And we only need look back to 2008 and the disaster that happened there, because people, the banking control environment, didn't really understand how some of the derivative products that were being used and sold worked, and that led to an inability to regulate them properly, which led to the disasters we had, which had huge implications. And I think the same thing could be true of some of the cryptocurrencies and distributed ledger technologies, that unless policymakers really understand how they work and spend the time that people like David and myself have spent to work through and sit down and read and understand how they work, how do you then regulate their use if you don't understand that at a fundamental level? And that's my complaint all the time whenever I speak to people about it, or people who have a very strong opinion. Very few of those people with very strong opinions like David actually also understand how the technology works. So that would be my one plea, would be, if you have a role in the governance, the policy making around this technology, spend time to understand it, because as David said, it's not actually as difficult as it sounds.
Well, David, I was about to say there's a bit of a clash between you and Keith, because Keith says it's complex. Well, it's too complex for many people. Maybe people are just not bright enough.
Some people just don't understand tech, and in policy making, you're not a technical person. You're probably not a techie. You're probably a policy maker.
Yeah.
So I would say that you can short circuit the technical arguments if you keep in mind, what if this technical argument is just them throwing up chaff to construct a financial instrument to do untoward things with? Because it's not software engineering at all. That's not the interesting bit. The interesting bit is the financial engineering, where they build complex chains of leverage that then fall over. Like crypto just did its own small 2008 crisis. That's
and
important.
who's been harmed? Who's been harmed apart from,
everyone who put their money into Voyager and Celsius?
People who put their money into unregulated stuff. They
looked regulated, that lied that it was regulated.
Yeah.
There are real victims here. But also it wastes a lot of effort on boondoggles. It's not an exciting new technological innovation, because these people promise magic, and magic doesn't happen. Blockchains won't magically make your bureaucracy efficient. Of course they won't. You know better than that. They won't magically make the economy work in different ways. Of course they won't. That's a regulatory matter. It's a lot of the promises. If you hear promises that would turn the whole world upside down, they're probably not true. Sometimes they are, but they're probably not true, particularly if they're coming from a salesman who's had no product to show for the last 13 years, but says it's early days, as his excuse.
There were a lot of boosters around in the early stages of the internet.
Yep, and there were things that actually worked and were useful and were so obviously useful that everybody wanted them as soon as they could get their hands on them, which is what we actually saw with the internet. And we don't see that with crypto. So
are you saying that it needs to be regulated? Because there's a paradox here, isn't it? If you start regulating it, people might think unwisely that it was safer than it actually is.
A lot of this stuff is existing financial products. They've just done them on a blockchain.
Yeah.
So they should be regulated like the existing products.
Mm-hmm.
Keith, is that your recommendation too?
Yes, yeah, exactly. I agree absolutely with what David said there.
And David, we've had a lot of fun, that's my timer telling us our time is up. Briefly, are you going to be carrying on preaching the truth about Bitcoin, or is it going to go out of fashion and you'll have to find yourself another job?
I'd be delighted to be able to stop, but I expect this to be around for a long time unless it gets so egregious that it just gets completely squashed.
Okay. David, Gerard, Keith, Pritchard, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
I hope you've all enjoyed this discussion. I think we've concluded that crypto probably isn't the new internet.
Hope so.